Scott from Lawrence Hypnotherapy, and welcome. Thanks for watching it today. Like, I'm with an amazing guest, Jess McCann, who's a love and karma coach and the author of the book Cursed, which is a book that I've been through recently and many times as I was learning about myself, and it's stuff that I've actually talked to clients about in my practice as well. So it's something that I found like to be a very practical a very practical book on basically like what to do if you're looking for love, or if you're looking for, how to find out, what's going on in your own head. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I can't wait to get into our discussion.
Yeah. So if we could just start sort of like a little bit broadly, like dating, like what is it? Like what's going on in the world? Like when somebody wants to kind of like find a date, or when they're trying to work out like what's wrong with them. And that might be, how they phrase it to themselves, like, or cursed is like the title of the book. What is dating? How does it all work?
Oh my goodness, what is dating? That's a loaded question, right? But basically, if you're in the right mindset, dating should be a really lovely process of sitting down with another human being and making a connection over an hour and seeing if you want to take that connection further and dive deeper with that other person. And if you do, wonderful. And if you don't, that's okay. You've just spent an hour with another human being, getting to know them and connecting. And that connection should still serve a purpose, whether it's to have a nice interaction, human to human, or practice how to go on a date and be with someone you don't know and learn to ask good questions. But dating itself should be easy, enjoyable. And the problem is that for most people, it's just not. But that's the goal, right? The goal is to make a connection with everyone you sit down with, and then decide, should we take this connection further and see each other again?
Yeah. So where does dating all go wrong?
Well, it usually goes wrong. And you pointed out my book, Cursed, which I do want to say, Cursed is getting a makeover. It's getting an update, and it will be re-released with a new title. I don't know if I've actually told you this, but it will be called If Love's a Blessing, Why Do I Feel Cursed? And the reason I changed is because the inside is getting a whole makeover. So I felt like a new, fresh title would be appropriate. So, where does it all go wrong? It goes wrong from the very start, even if people don't realize that's when it's going wrong. And what I mean is, some people will come to me and say, I don't know what it is. I can't get past the third date, or I don't know what it is. We date for 4 weeks and then the person ghosts. But what's happening is that's just when it's falling apart. But usually it's going wrong from the get-go, from before the date even materializes. And where it falls apart, well, that's kind of arbitrary. That does tell us something, but it really stems from, what are you doing when you go on these dates? Are you doing what I recommended, which is sitting down and trying to have that lovely human to human connection? Or are you going on the date and the date is being used as a purpose to serve yourself in some way? For instance, you're going on the date because you're lonely, or everyone else has a boyfriend or girlfriend and you're trying to catch up. You don't think that you're as good as everybody else if you're single. If you're going on dates for a self-serving purpose, which are some of those, and there's many others, then you're not making that human to human connection, and the other person is aware of it. And that's where people usually go wrong.
So there's like a past, or a trauma, or a baggage, or something to prove, or some need to fulfill. And if any of those are brought to the date, so you would say that like maybe the other person can detect it, and it stops them from actually just wanting to be there. Like,
exactly.
Because like one part in your book, like when you talked about like mentally dating someone, I just love that terminology, because I think that as soon as you say it, people know exactly what you're talking about. And it sort of gets them into reality when they're thinking like, oh, that person that, you call every now and then, do they know that you think about them in the way that you do? And do they see you like the same way? Or like talking about like, that if you need the absolute perfect person, that's just impossible to define anyway. So like if that's baggage that's brought to the date, that's going to be that, that anyone that you meet is never going to be good enough for you. or that you're not good enough for them, so you start making excuses. So it really does seem to sort of manifest as like there's something like they've been through that's caused them to have like, you know, a filter between them and reality, and they're bringing that instead of like what you described, I think perfectly, was meet a person, have a connection, see what happens.
Right. That's
That,
so well put, Scott. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that filter, yes, can happen for a lot of reasons. And sometimes people will say to me, because trauma is the most likely reason, but some people will say, I don't have trauma. I don't have a trauma. My past was great. I would have been one of those people that would have said, my past was great. My childhood was great. But it's not about having a trauma sometimes. Sometimes it's just about going through life completely absorbed in yourself, which is the main purpose of Curse, is to sort of wake up from this self-absorbed thinking, right? And when people hear that term self-absorbed, they think, that's narcissism. I'm not self-absorbed, but
yeah.
I'm sure we're going to go into it, but there are different ways to be self-absorbed. And depending on your experiences in the past, they might not have been traumatic, but they could have turned your focus inward so that you are too self-focused and not enough focus on others.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that self-focused can sound like an insult, and it's like if you say to someone, do you know what your problem is? People often don't lean in and say, please tell me. But it's with that tough love of saying, like, can we have the conversation about what's really happening? Like, if you're suffering and you want a result, can we then have the conversation about what's really happening? So self-absorbed could be, again, like, that instead of like actually seeing the other person, they see through that filter, like through their expectation, or through, let's say, whoever their ex was or whoever their past date was represented a particular type of thing. And we all do this where we look at someone's face and we've already made up our mind about who they are. Like, is he or she a snob? Are they needy? Are they anything else? And would you say that like the self-absorbed could maybe mean that they're not sort of like seeing the next person they're with, they're seeing the previous person they're with on the next person they're with?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's a lot of projecting either the past or future onto the
Yeah.
people in front of us. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did the Me Too movement have an impact on how all this dating stuff's going?
Well, I think so. I think it mainly affected a lot of men in the way that they are a little more cautious about advancing towards women, asking for dates or making physical moves, whether it's holding a hand or, stealing a kiss. I think they've become a little more cautious for sure. So I do think that was probably what I've noticed to be the biggest change since the Me Too movement.
Okay. What advice would you give to people like now that we're, since this has happened, like for men especially, like what's the best thing that they can do if they want to date somebody, but they would also like to be, respectful of the other person's feelings?
Yeah, right. Well, I would say that to just constantly take the temperature of the situation, and there's never any harm in asking the questions, as long as they're delivered in a appropriate manner. The men that are going to get in trouble are the ones that likely were not very respectful before the movement. So I
Yeah.
always think that the movement is really just creating that very firm line between acceptable and non-acceptable behavior. And
Yeah.
guys that were gentlemen and generally good people with good moral code aren't going to have an issue. It's the ones that kind of had that blurry line anyway. So for them, I would say it's a good wake-up call. It's a good wake-up call to really take note. How are you delivering your messages? And are you really seeing the other person, or is the woman there to serve, be some sort of self-serving need for you, whether it be sex or something else?
I get you. So again, back to that genuine connection instead of like the past or needs and all those extra things. Um, would you say that in a way that like could dating be more confusing for men, or is that a myth?
Um, I've never really thought about that. I think in general, it's confusing to a lot of people, whether they're men and women, men or women. I don't know if I've ever noticed if it's entirely one gender or not, gets more confused. But I think that
Yeah.
confusion is a common feeling that comes with dating, because there's two people trying to gauge how much the other person is interested without the other person saying how interested they are, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people reading going on. And some people, I would say large majority of people, have a really hard time reading the person across to them. And I guess that's why they always hire me, because I'm sort of known as a great people reader, without even having to be in front of somebody. If people tell me a little bit about who they're dating, I can get this picture and I can
Yeah.
put the puzzle together and go, oh, here's who that person is. And later on, maybe months down the road, the client will come back and say, oh, you were right, he was exactly that way. So people have this block where they can't read the other person and they can't see who that other person is. And the block, circling all the way back, is we're too focused on ourselves. If we're too focused
Yes.
on us and how people view us, then we're not really truly focused on another person, and we can't really see them and we can't really know them or understand them.
That makes a lot of sense, because then they're like, it's great that that you can, based on the information that people tell you, that you can basically see the patterns, or if you've seen the patterns before, and you can kind of identify, again, like, as you said, like, it can all come back to the self-focus, but there's like a multitude of ways that it is self-focus, and by able to based on their language patterns as well, perhaps, like being able to tell them which one that it was.
Right.
There was a TV show once that I saw that was trying to show sort of some difference between, like, how men can read a situation and how women can read a situation. And so, like, there was these two teenagers in school, and basically they're at the lockers before class. And so, like, the guy is at his locker, and apparently he's quite popular and quite friendly, and the girls especially, they seem to like him. And one of the girls came up to him and said that, like, hey, you're in my science class, aren't you? And he said, like, yeah, that's right, I'll see you in class. And then sort of she runs off and cries and says, like, you're the worst. And so then, like, from watching that situation, I was talking to, like, a lot of men about that particular scene, and they've gone, I was asking, like, what did he do wrong? And it's like none of the men could tell me. It's like, I don't know, like, she's just crazy. Like, she just come and said, like, you're in my class. And he's like, yeah, that's right. And then she runs off crying. And then I started talking to some women about the scene, and they've gone, like, you can't tell what she wanted? I'm like, yeah, I can't tell what she wanted. Like, what did she want? And they've gone, like, she's hinting that they could walk to class together. And I go, oh, well, I didn't hear her say that. And it's like, no, she's not going to say that. She kind of brings up the topic around it. Like, does that kind of make sense? Or is that kind of a scenario that seems to happen?
That's so cute. That's a great example, because it just shows women obviously know all the backstory, right? We all know the feeling of when we like someone, how we're going to put ourselves out there, not too aggressively, but we might take a first step to break the ice. And so that was the way she was breaking the ice, hoping that by breaking the ice, the man or the guy would say, oh, I'm so glad you're talking to me, and fully engage, right? Let's walk to
Yeah.
class together, or ask a question back. And that didn't happen, which is why she's running off crying, because he just answered her question and looked at her, right?
Yeah.
So women don't know the backstory, because we all understand it. Men don't know the full female backstory most of the time.
Yeah. Because it's kind of interesting that, like, for human rights, we basically want to say that men and women are the same, because we want to respect everyone. We want to be nice to everybody. But at the same time, men and women can be very different in how they go about things. And so, like, in order
Mhm.
to date, like, it can be very important to kind of know that, like, she spent a lot of time, like making sure that, you know, she looks a particular way for the date, and he just kind of shaves or showers or something. And so she's put in a lot of effort, and she then sort of expects him to like at least be present. However, like if he doesn't know how to be present, or if he doesn't know how to give the signs to show that he's present, even if he wants to, it can be like very confusing for him, because he's going, if she could just be direct and say like, stand up, sit down, go pay the bill, it's like, you know, I would be obedient, I would go and do those things. But like sort
Right.
of like, it's kind of though that a woman seems to, like, let's say on a date, perhaps, like they're not always going to be using direct language.
Uh-huh.
They seem to like, they'll hint perhaps, or they'll kind of like they'll bring up again, like, you know, lateral or kind of things that are adjacent to the topic to see how he goes. And it's like, it's interesting to see like that, you know, those two people, for them to ever sort of get on, it's almost like, you know, that they've got to catch lightning in a bottle, or it seems like almost the right I guess combination of events needed to occur for him, for, you know, for the two of them to be on the same page.
Right. Well, what you're pointing out is the very common sticking point of how people need good communication in order to have a relationship materialize and move forward. And without that real true communication, it can't happen. People will continually talk past each other or just not connect, because one is thinking one way and the other is thinking the other way, and neither is really expressing, you know, what they're truly thinking. So to go back to that example you point out in the TV show, what could have happened differently? Instead of her running off and saying, I'm going to do boy and girl, instead of the girl running off and saying,
Yep.
you're the worst, she could have kept engaging, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. We are in science class. Okay. Did you do your homework assignment last night? What did you think of the assignment? I don't know if I like the teacher. She's been really mean lately, or strict, whatever. She could have kept engaging further. Or, you know, if she ran off and he's standing there going, what happened? Run after her. I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong? I thought I was answering your question. So that, you know, that's what could have happened. But instead she ran off and he went, what? And that was the end of it, right?
That was the end of it. Yeah. So,
So
one followed up.
he followed up.
I was like, oh, that was the end of the scene. So neither one seemed to follow up.
Yeah.
It may have
right.
been from, like, I don't know if you've seen Family Guy, but all those little cutaways they do,
Yes.
just as a crazy scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, it's fascinating kind of like watching that the whole thing was based on confusion.
Right.
What seemed to have inspired you to basically, you know, not just like to write Cursed, but to get into the whole helping people with love in the first place?
Oh, well, in the beginning, it was because I ran my own sales company, and I would teach my sales employees how to sell our products. And I would use relationships as the example of how to build a relationship with a customer. I would say, when
Yes.
you go in and meet this customer, you know, think about how you would be on a date. And so when I would run these meetings, everybody would say, you're really good. Like, your tips are making me better at dating, not just at
Yeah.
selling. And I would say, great. And then they told me to write a book. So I wrote a book. But over time, since I've gotten into the industry and helped people get better at dating, I started to notice these patterns that no matter how much they got better at dating, their relationship part was still failing. And like you pointed out, people would say, I don't know, I'm just cursed. The same thing keeps happening no matter how many dates I go on or how many relationships I get into, I'm just cursed. So when I started realizing what the curse was, and I realized I had it in myself, you know, I realized I was sabotaging my own love life. And of course, I'm married now 11 years and I have 2 kids. So, you know, it works out once you figure out that curse. But I woke up to my own self-absorbed thinking. And then I wanted to free everyone else from their self-absorbed thinking, because I knew how much suffering and sabotage came from it. So it was really just an investigation of my clients and their patterns, in tandem with understanding myself and what I was doing to contribute to, the failings of my own relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does seem to come from like our own experiences. And then as you were saying, like with the sales and the sales team, like it's kind of interesting. Like a lot of people seem to like see the connection between those two. Like when you see a customer and like you see the customer and like you've got this product that's like say 20 grand and you go, will you marry me on the first date? Versus, building some trust, building some courtship of some kind. Um, and like, yeah, absolutely. Like the sales and like all of that psychology is really good, like marriage counseling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, like one of my favorite things that like, I think I was, do you know the guy called Brennan Bouchard?
No, I don't think so.
He's a he's an American. He's a coach, author, and does all the different categories of being an expert, kind of like Tony Robbins, but not quite as well known.
Yeah.
But he was talking about the 20-minute gift, where so
Mhm.
it goes for 40 minutes because people take turns, and so like as they come into the house, one of them donates 20 minutes to the other person to focus on like what they want to talk about, and then
Mhm.
they take so then the other person gets 20 minutes, and so one of them maybe wants to be left alone, the other one wants to talk. Like one wants to kind of just like watch football, the other one wants to kind of like plan for the weekend. And when they take those turns, like instead of them taking the same turn at the same time, it seems to help them to sort of like be on the same page together as to like what the other person's actually wanting. And so then after that 40 minutes, once they've both taken a turn, afterwards, the rest of the night seems to go a lot better because they're at least aware what's on the other person's mind.
Ooh, I love that. I'm glad you shared that with me this morning. That is a really valuable tip. I'm going to apply that to my marriage. I'm going to try that
Yeah.
out. I love it.
Apparently, another good part of that was to alternate who goes first.
Hmm.
It's like saying
Yeah.
almost like goodnight to your kids, that sometimes, how you, like if the kids are really young and you go into their rooms and say goodnight to them, if it's the same order all the time, it's like, oh, he or she's the most important, followed by the
Yes.
next kid.
Yes.
And you mix it up to go like, you're different ages, but the love is, equal.
Yeah. I love that.
Because it does sort of seem that a lot of our issues of any kind sort of comes down to psychology in a lot of ways. Like whether it's
Hmm.
like, how politics gets into every single conversation, even if it's not about it, like, it filters down. Or when it comes to like, the world and like what we want to do in it. Like if we become better at psychology, it does feel as like that's the answer to fixing a lot of problems, because then it's like it's about learning about ourselves and it's learning about other people, relationships, which is like relationships is sales as well, or it's like it's career. It's like when you want a promotion or whatever it is, or if you want to be nicer to the world or kind of be more self-aware. It's a very noble pursuit to kind of to basically just like learn how do humans work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm always like curious to hear like like stories or frameworks, and your book in particular. Let's say like something that's out there a lot, which is like Hollywood movies. They seem to lie to us about what love is, in a big way. It's kind of like they would almost try to convince us that if a man does something to a woman that's like really annoyed her and she's just really just had enough, he can do one big gesture and that's all forgiven, one time.
Right.
And so one of my friends once said that she had a dinner with her, so it was an ex now, but it's she had a dinner with her boyfriends, and it cost about $7,000 for the dinner for a special occasion. And then she's asking, what are we doing tomorrow night for dinner? And then he gets angry, going, what? I just spent $7,000 on tonight's dinner and you're not grateful for that. And you're already asking about tomorrow. Do you want me to spend $14,000 on dinners for 2 nights? She's like, no, that's not what I asked. I just asked, what are we doing for dinner? I just want to know what you want to do. It could be, like fairy bread in the park. I don't care. I just asking, what are we going to do? But the interpretation of the question, like there's like the way the question's asked, and then there's the way that the question's received,
Yeah.
which can be very different. It's like a huge distance or a gap. But there is like, whether it's Hollywood or whatever it is, or our own brains or something, sometimes it sort of seems like the male brain is convinced that women are looking for one giant gesture one time once. And like,
I love that. I mean, I fell victim to that when I was younger. Where is that big gesture? You messed up. Send me flowers now. That's what
yeah,
Hollywood would teach you. And of course, the gesture won't solve the problem. It makes you feel good that day, probably, but the communication problem will be there tomorrow if you don't actually fix it.
absolutely.
And it's hard to fix, just as you're pointing out. People perceive messages, people deliver messages in a way. And if you don't understand the person, you will definitely not receive the message in a way. And if you don't know your audience, you don't know how to deliver the message so that the person will receive it. So it can get very complicated. I mean, and the easiest answer is find someone that speaks your language, right? Find someone that is very similar to you so that it's not so hard, or get really good at understanding the person that you're in a relationship with. Ask a lot of questions, but until you sort of drop your ego at the door, so to speak,
Yeah.
you have to remove that self-absorbed mind chatter, or it will be almost impossible to truly connect and understand another person, because you will filter everything through a very personal viewpoint. Everything that the other person says will be taken so personally.
Is
That's
there an
where people go
example?
wrong.
How could that play out perhaps? So like that there's the ego, maybe like the person's not even aware that they're bringing it to the party or to the date.
Mhm.
What's perhaps like an example of how that can play out?
Of how the ego will get in the way or miscommunicate.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay. There, I mean, we could pick any example, right? So you go on a date with somebody, and well, I mean, you just pointed it out with the example of, I just dropped all this money
Yeah.
on the date, right? And then she says, "What are we doing tomorrow night?" Like, so her mind, her ego is in the future, right? And she might be very future focused, and the ego loves the future, loves the past, and does not exist in the present. So she is 100% in her self-absorbed future mind, thinking, this was so great. What can I do? What can we do tomorrow? I can't wait to figure out tomorrow so I can think about that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's sitting there. Now, I don't know what he was thinking. His reaction to me was appropriate. He might have been just in the moment going, wait a minute, you left the present moment, you know? And,
Yeah.
or he could have if he got angry, that means he's looking at her and sort of going into a self-absorbed victim mentality of, how dare you not appreciate what I just did?
Yeah.
I feel victimized now, and I get that, because, $7,000 on dinner, I think anyone would feel that way. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, it's still going into that victim mentality of, you're not grateful, and shame on you, and you're taking advantage of me. What, you want me to spend some more money tomorrow? You want to
Yeah.
use me some more? So that's the ego in the negative sense, in the victim sense. So
Yeah.
those are it's a very good example on both ends of how ego can really mess up a situation very quickly.
I really like how you went into both misunderstandings. So that like perhaps like, from her side, she's not aware that he's still like, very much in the moment, kind of going like, hey, I did this, like, where's my acknowledgement? Or like, perhaps like if he feels that he's been nagged for a long time, like, when are you going to take me on a really great dinner? And he's like eventually going like, that thing you keep asking me for, here it is, let's enjoy it. And she's like, yeah, but what about tomorrow? And he's like sort of feeling that, I suppose, like the amount of requests for like, let's have this dinner versus the amount of acknowledgement for, we're having this dinner, in his head wasn't a match. And so she wouldn't
Yeah,
be aware of that. And for him to get angry, he feels, as like used, or like, is this just a free meal? Or like, if they've been dating for a long time, it's more kind of
right,
like, you just don't appreciate anything. You don't care about anyone but yourself. You're just, or whatever the phrases might be that come out. But
right.
the whole thing based on they're just on a completely different page to each other.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right.
and
And I will just say, like, the right way to handle it, and I don't like using the word right, but the best way, I guess I should say, the best way to handle it is for him to, instead of getting upset, point out, it really hurt my feelings just now that you were talking about tomorrow when we're still enjoying this wonderful, expensive evening tonight. It makes me feel like you're not that grateful. And then, of course, her reaction should be, I'm sorry. I definitely did not want to diminish the night.
I like bringing up the feeling. It's like the I feel statements without an attack. It's
Yeah,
like without that elbow in the ribs of like making the other person wrong, but still like the ability to bring up like the feeling, like
yeah,
like in the in those westerns, like where like someone's got a gun and it's like they're a gunslinger and the other person doesn't have one, so they throw a gun at your feet and they say pick it up, and like you just know what's going to happen the second you touch that gun. They feel like they've got permission to shoot. And so as when you bring up like an I feel statement with an insult attached of like I feel that I'd just like for you to acknowledge tonight first and then to move on, then plus that you selfish, or whatever the insult's going to be.
yeah, right.
It's like that
Throwing the
they've
gun.
touched it. Yeah, they're holding a gun.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
so it's kind of like that adult to adult language of like,
yeah,
don't suppress it all together, like tell the other person how you feel, but there's no need to make the other wrong or to attack.
exactly.
There was kind of there was an interesting thing that I saw happening like near my hypnotherapy practice, like where I see clients. They've demolished this building that was like next door, and like there was a bit of an alley, and now it's this big beautiful park area which looks amazing. But back when it was an alley, it was a very dark alley, and it was really weird kind of at night. There's like a train station and then there's a bar. So this alley was like that where you go to get from the train station to the bar. There was these two there was this Christian couple that they were in their 60s or 70s, and every night they would bring a barbecue, local, cook for people in that alley. And so I came up to them like one time and just asked, like, I just went, hi, how are you going, and what are you guys doing here? Like, oh yeah, we're cooking a barbecue. There's cordial, there's drinks, there's sausage and onion and sauce, whatever it is that you want. And then I just asked them, like, are you guys ever worried about being attacked? And they've gone, no, we've been here for 23 years. Every Friday night from, 11 a.m. until about 3 in the morning. And not once in 23 years have we ever been attacked. Like, well, how do you know that someone doesn't have like a knife in their bag? Or like, how do you, that like, that if somebody's just been like in a fist fight and like they've got blood on their face or whatever it is, and that you can tell that they've just been like in a violent interaction of some kind, like, does that worry you? And they've gone, what they do is they come to us and they get a sausage, they get some bread, and they get a drink. And they've gone, well, have you ever been robbed? And they've gone, well, there's no money, so we actually give these out for free. And then like the husband's cooking, and the wife is she's got this accordion that she likes to play, and then she hands out like little leaflets to her church. And so the idea, the exchange is that like, you get like some free food, and then she encourages you to come to her church. And then like, no matter what the guys were doing, they could have been just in a fight, or they could just be walking home. And they stop and they sit down and they have a conversation about something, and then eventually they leave. I was going, well, what if someone wants 2 sausages? It's like, well, then we offer them 3 until they run out. But there's nothing that anybody can steal that we're not like giving away for free.
Yeah.
And then it sort of made me think about like when somebody attacks, they attack when they either feel that there's a payday or a jackpot that they can access, or if the other person's touched the gun. So it's kind of like in the relationship as well. It's like that people seem to sort of like only attack if, like, even verbally an insult, if they feel that the other person's calling them wrong, or if there's some kind of a prize that they deserve or want or something on the other side, and they don't know how to get it any other way except for to take it somehow.
I love that, Scott. Woo, you said a lot there. That was so on point. So on
Yeah.
point. Sorry, I feel like I interrupted you, but you're giving me goosebumps. You're so right. It's the prize of ego, right? It's the prize of, aha, I inflated myself. I'm enhanced because I'm right. And if I'm right, I'm superior.
Yeah.
That's what we always think of in the attack of the verbal kind.
Yeah. Because it's an interesting world at the moment, especially how, like we're saying, like, the politics seems to come down into every conversation. We're a big culture in a way of what we call like not that, as in like we don't say what we want, we say what we don't want. We say not that. So like
Yeah.
with the politics, it's like the other side's wrong, we're right. But they don't necessarily say I want and then create a picture of it.
Yeah.
So the same as like in the dates, it's like that we hear, like it's very similar to the politics stuff. It's like not that, not that, not that. But they're not necessarily like, whether it's the men or the women, whoever it is, there does seem to be this pattern of not describing what they want. They're describing what they deserve, or they're telling you like, what their ex did. And that's something that I did for quite some time. I was married or with my ex for 8 years. And then everybody that I saw after that was like, I lost a relationship, time to get one back. And from what you've described, like self-focus, it's not like meet the person, who are you? It's like, well, any argument that I didn't finish with her, I'm going to come and finish with you. It's like, no thanks.
Right. Right.
And it makes total sense.
Yeah.
That when we create like, I suppose like first, like, an open space just to have the discussion, and then maybe like a vision of like what could happen or what they want, it seems to be so much better than not that. Like apparently, like, like with the brain, how it works, that the subconscious doesn't seem to be able to do negations. Like if someone says, don't think of the number 3, you think of it anyway.
Right.
Or don't think of your ex. Oh, great. Now I'm thinking of my ex because you said don't think of them. Like apparently, like if there's like a 5-year-old girl and it's late, it's time for bed, you might say something nice like, go to bed. But you wouldn't probably say, don't have those nightmares that make you wet the bed about zombies and vampires.
Right.
Because what's being put in the other person's head is a picture, sound, or feeling. And so like with a 5-year-old girl, we don't just take responsibility for the logic, which is go to bed. We also take responsibility for, are we saying it in a way where we're responsible for the picture, sounds, and feelings that we're putting in the other person's head? So like the same as on dates, it can be the words that you're saying or that they're saying on a date. What pictures does that put into the other person's head? Is it really just bringing up, the ex, or is it bringing up their, whatever it is that their self-focus is that just getting projected all over the other person? Instead of like, well, what about the opportunity that 2 people are sharing some space and just sort of having a good time? I think there was a particular chapter of yours that I read, which seems to be like a massive anxiety cure about like, if you could be guaranteed that, let's say in 2 or 3 days or something, you'll meet the love of your life and you'll settle down, you'll have babies and everything's going to be perfect. Do you care that for the next 2 days or so, or let's say 3 months, who cares? But just for the next frame of time that you're not going to spend time with them? Like, no, I don't particularly mind. I don't particularly care that I'm not going to meet them right now. It's like, well, but it felt urgent a second ago. Does it feel urgent now? Like, well, no, actually, I'm perfectly fine. Plus, I'm busy and tired. I just want to go to bed. I don't need someone in my bed tonight. I actually would just like to sleep.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That,
I know. Go ahead.
yeah. Sorry, you go.
No, yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember writing that, and it's one of my favorite examples only because clients come to me all the time and say this: if I knew that I was going to get married, if I knew I was going to meet the right person, even if it was 1 year or 5 years down the line, I'd stop worrying today. If I knew I could embrace life, I could be totally living in the now, I would be happy and content today. If I knew that then. And I have to say to them, I'm sorry, you will never know the future. No one knows the future. And instead of wishing you could tell the future or that I could tell it to you, you need to accept the fact that life is uncertain. You need to accept the fact that the future, you'll never know it. you'll never know the future. Even if you get married, you'll still not know the future of where that marriage is going to go, or the days are going to be like, or what your kids are going to be like. The problem right there is to switch from, I'm anxious because I want to know that I'm going to be married. That's not what the problem is. The problem is you're anxious because your mind is always in the future, trying to figure it out. And you can never know it. So it's an unresolvable problem.
Yeah. Like one of the worst possible questions could be, what if everything goes wrong? Like, well, everything goes wrong, then you're stuffed. Next client, please. Like, there's no good answer, because they're not
Right.
asking, like, how do I make the future better? They're just asking, what if everything goes wrong? Well, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong.
Well, here's my answer to that, because it's the perfect place to insert my all-time favorite quote by Eckhart Tolle. You can't cope with the future, nor do you have to. And if the future that you're fearing comes to the present moment, only then can you deal with it, and you'll have all the tools you need to cope with it then. I mean,
Yeah.
that just, when I heard that, my anxiety evaporated. I realized, oh my God, I'm not anxious. I'm just future focused. And I'm
Yes.
continually trying to control the future or cope with a what if terrible scenario. I'm trying to cope with it when it hasn't happened. I can only cope when it's in the present moment, because that's the only time I have the tools, the resources. That's the only time I can get my hands around it.
Because the self-focus and the future focus together with the picture, sound, and feelings, they're literally using their imagination to conjure up nightmares.
Right.
And like saying that, can't see the future, they can't see the present because they're trying to see the future.
Oh,
They
yes,
could see
that's
the
right.
present.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. When
Yeah.
I say in Cursed, I say in my book, when you're always in the future, you're absent from the present. And the present is the most important moment when it comes to connecting and finding love.
That is an epic quote. If I could perhaps take that as a soundbite as well, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Have
use it.
it.
So with your book and your programs, the things that you do, how can people get in contact with you?
Oh, so many ways. So many ways. I'm very open on Instagram these days, so people can, follow my Instagram page. I'm also, I have a website. I do check it, but I seem to be checking Instagram more often. So I would say that's the first place to go. But jessmccann.com is my website. And my books are all on Amazon. Cursed, Why You Still Don't Have the Relationship You Want, and the 5 Cures That Can Transform Your Love Life, which again will be changing to if love's a blessing, why do I feel cursed? And I meant to ask you this, Scott, because I'm on Clubhouse and I do regular rooms on Clubhouse talking about, love, relationships, karma. Are you on Clubhouse?
No.
Okay, I've got to send you an invite because you're perfect for it. You'll love it. Have you heard of it yet?
I think I've heard of it. I just haven't taken action on it, but I'm excited to get in there.
Okay, so it's very cool, and it's invite only. So I'll send you an invite. The only way people are getting on is if somebody invites them. So you can't download it and just enter. It'll say you're on the wait list. But I tell people, if you want to in on Clubhouse, just ask me. Invites get replenished. The more you use Clubhouse, the more invites you get. And I've got like 4 right now. So I'll send you one right after we hang up, because I've got a club on Clubhouse called Enlighten Me. And I talk about things that hopefully enlighten people to all the stuff we're talking about right now. So those are the many, many ways to get in touch with me and either find me for coaching or grab a book or come and join a discussion on Clubhouse.
Perfect. So I'll share a couple of links under the video. So if we could have like one for the book on Amazon, so Cursed, and as it changes title, we'll update the link as well. So click the link for Cursed. What's another link that you'd like for people to click on? So I'll make sure it's under the video.
Oh, my Instagram link would be great. It's
Perfect.
Say Just to Love is my Instagram handle.
Say Just to Love. Excellent. That's so good. Thank you so much for your time and the nuggets of wisdom from your book especially, because like it's like with my practice, like I read people's books and then I tell them like what I'm reading that week, and it just this doesn't always happen with a book, but there was like nugget after nugget after nugget of like going, oh, that's gold, and oh, that's gold, and oh, that's gold.
Oh, thank you.
Like there's books that do that, but they're the ones that you're looking for when you want to read something. So I can tell like the amount of love and effort that went into that book versus someone who's just pumped one out. But this you can tell that this particular book, so much love and so much care went into it, and it's really helped me to be able to see things in a better way.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And you know what I'll do for you too? I'm going to send you the updated manuscript for the new version. So you have it. And I just sent it to another friend yesterday. So I have it like on PDF, and I'll send it to you. So you have the unpublished manuscript. You can have the newest version.
Excellent. That is such an honor.
Oh, it's not really, but I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. And this has been so nice. It's been so nice to talk to you. And you really need to get on Clubhouse, because you're perfect for having Clubhouse discussions, because you really understand a lot of this material, but you're also very good at question asking and having a dialogue. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let me write down that I'm going to send you the invite and send you the book. Two things I need to do this morning: invite for Scott.
Perfect.
Book for Scott.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording. I want people, like, guys, click the link. The book, books are, they cost so little for what you get.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really great way that if you're suffering in the dating world, this will help. It helped me, and it's helped a lot of people.
That's my hope. And I really appreciate you saying it, because it did take 8 years to write Cursed, and another year right now to update it to where I really think it would be super helpful for people. And I appreciate what you said. I'm glad that the love I put into it is coming out, because there was a lot of love. It was definitely a labor of love.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to hit the stop button. And
Okay.
guys, click the button.